My name is Serena Rogers. I'm 29 years old, and 3 months ago, I helped my best friend get my dream job. Last week, I got her fired from it. But that's not where this story starts. It starts on a Tuesday morning in March when I was sitting in a coffee shop near my apartment in Brooklyn, refreshing my email every 30 seconds like my life depended on it. I'd been tracking a job opening at Meridian Creative for weeks, senior brand strategist. It was perfect, the kind of role I'd been working toward for 5 years, the kind that doesn't come around often in this industry. I had the portfolio, the experience, the contacts. I just needed the application window to open. My phone buzzed. It was my friend Nicole. Coffee later, need to vent about work. I texted back that I was already at our usual spot and she should come by. 20 minutes later, she walked in looking exhausted, dropping into the chair across from me with the heavy sigh of someone who'd been crying recently. She told me her boss had been making her life hell for months, micromanaging everything, criticizing her in front of clients, implying she wasn't smart enough for the role. She'd been applying to new jobs for weeks and getting nowhere. I listened, made the right supportive noises, ordered her a pastry. Then, without really thinking it through, I said, "You know what? There's an opening at Meridian. It's a bit senior for where you are now, but I could refer you. They take referrals seriously." Her eyes lit up in a way I hadn't seen in months. "Serena, are you serious? That would be amazing. I've heard incredible things about that place." I smiled and pulled up the careers page on my laptop, showing her the listing. It wasn't the exact role I'd been watching. It was a mid-level position, branding associate, something she was actually qualified for. I figured I'd refer her for that one, then apply for the senior role myself when it opened. We'd both win. She hugged me across the table, thanked me about 6 times, and promised she'd send over her resume that night. I wrote her a glowing referral email to the hiring manager, someone I'd connected with at an industry event months earlier. I mentioned Nicole's strengths, her eye for detail, her collaborative energy. I hit send and felt good about it. I was helping a friend in a bad situation. That's what you do. The senior role posted 3 days later. I spent an entire weekend perfecting my application, customizing every line of my cover letter, updating my portfolio with my two best recent campaigns. Monday morning, I submitted it. Then I waited. A week went by. I heard nothing. I checked the application portal obsessively, still under review. Nicole texted me during that week saying she'd gotten a call from Meridian and had a first interview scheduled. I congratulated her, genuinely happy. At least one of us was moving forward. Then on a Thursday afternoon, I got a rejection email, standard template. "Thank you for your interest. We've decided to move forward with other candidates. We encourage you to apply for future opportunities." I stared at my screen, reading it 3 times like the words might rearrange themselves into something different. I'd been rejected before, that wasn't new, but something about this felt wrong. I was perfect for that role. I knew I was. I called the hiring manager, the one I'd sent Nicole's referral to, and asked if there was any feedback on my application. She sounded uncomfortable, a little too polite. She said the position had been very competitive and they'd found someone whose experience was a better fit. I thanked her and hung up, feeling hollow. 2 days later, Nicole called me. She was screaming, actually screaming with excitement. "Serena, oh my God, I got it. I got the job at Meridian." I froze, my coffee cup halfway to my mouth. "Wait, which job?" I asked. There was a pause, just a half second too long. "The senior strategist role, the one you told me about. They said my interview was one of the best they'd seen, and I really impressed the team." My brain went blank. I managed to say congratulations, something about being happy for her, but my voice sounded far away. After we hung up, I sat there trying to piece it together. She'd applied for the mid-level job. I'd referred her for that. How did she end up in the senior role, the one I'd applied for? I opened LinkedIn and searched for the hiring manager's profile. Then I did something I don't usually do. I sent her a casual and friendly message saying I'd seen Nicole got hired and was so glad the referral worked out, and I was still very interested in future opportunities at Meridian. She replied a few hours later. "Thanks for the referral. Nicole mentioned you two were close, but she really stood out on her own. She was very transparent about her qualifications and her concerns about fit." Transparent about her concerns about fit. That phrase stuck in my head. I screenshotted the message and stared at it. Over the next week, I started asking questions carefully. I reached out to a friend of a friend who worked in Meridian's marketing department, said I was curious how their hiring process worked since I'd applied and gotten rejected. She told me that referrals carried weight, but ultimately the hiring team made decisions based on interviews and how candidates presented themselves. Then she said something that made my stomach turn. I heard they had a situation where two candidates knew each other, and one of them raised some concerns about the other's work style during the interview. Apparently, it factored into the decision. I hung up the phone and just sat there. We'd never worked together on a project, not once. She'd made it up. She'd gone into that interview for a job I helped her get and lied about me to eliminate me as a competitor. I didn't cry, I didn't yell. I just sat very still, feeling something cold settle into my chest. I thought about all the times I'd helped her, the referral, the resume edits, the late night calls when she was anxious about interviews. I'd handled her an opportunity and she'd used it to bury me. For 2 days, I did nothing. I went to work, came home, stared at my walls. Nicole texted me asking if I wanted to celebrate her new job over drinks. I said I was busy. She sent me a photo of her new office setup on her first day, smiling at the camera. I didn't respond. Then I started thinking clearly. I opened my laptop and pulled up every email, every text, every piece of communication between us about Meridian. I screenshotted my referral email with a timestamp showing I'd sent it before she even applied. I documented the dates of my application, my rejection, her offer. I made a folder and saved everything. Next, I went back through old messages and found something I'd forgotten about. 6 months earlier, Nicole had asked me to review a presentation she was working on for a client pitch. I'd send her detailed notes, including some strategic frameworks and ideas I'd developed. A week later, she'd presented that pitch. Her boss loved it. She got a bonus. She never mentioned my notes. I'd brushed it off at the time, but now I pulled up those messages and added them to my folder. I wasn't sure yet what I was going to do with all of this. I just knew I needed it organized and saved. I needed proof. Nicole started at Meridian the first week of April. She posted about it constantly. First day outfit, team lunch, coffee in the break room with a caption about new beginnings. She tagged Meridian in everything, playing the grateful, excited new hire. I watched it all from a distance, not liking anything, not commenting. She didn't seem to notice. 3 weeks into her new job, she texted me, "Hey, I know you've been distant. Are we okay?" I replied, "I've just been busy. Congrats again on the job." She sent me a heart emoji and didn't push further. I spent those 3 weeks doing something I'd never done before. I researched her, not in her social media. I already knew that. I looked into her actual work. I reached out to 2 people she'd worked with at her previous company, people I knew through industry networks. I framed it casually, said I was thinking about a potential collaboration and wanted to know about her work style. Both of them were polite, but their answers were careful. One of them said, "Nicole's great at presenting ideas, but execution can be inconsistent. She's very focused on perception." The other one was more direct. "She's ambitious, sometimes a little too ambitious. Just make sure you protect your work if you collaborate with her." I asked what she meant. She hesitated, then told me that Nicole had once taken a junior designer's concept, tweaked it slightly, and presented it as her own in a client meeting. The designer had been too intimidated to speak up. Nicole got praised. The designer left the company 6 months later. I added that conversation to my notes. Then I did something that felt risky but necessary. I created a fake LinkedIn profile, professional-looking photo, vague job title, a few connections in adjacent industries. I sent a connection request to Nicole's former boss, the one she'd complained about for months. He accepted. I sent him a message saying I was considering hiring Nicole for a freelance project and wanted to verify her experience. Would he be willing to share his thoughts? He responded within an hour. His message was long and surprisingly detailed. He said Nicole was talented, but had a pattern of exaggerating her contributions to projects. He mentioned that she'd claimed sole credit for a campaign that had been a team effort, and when confronted, she'd accused him of not supporting her growth. He said he'd tried to manage her diplomatically, but she'd made the work environment difficult, and eventually he was relieved when she left. He ended the message by saying, If you do hire her, just keep a close eye on attribution and make sure everything is documented. I read that message 5 times. Then I saved it. By the end of April, I had a clear picture. Nicole wasn't just someone who'd lied about me once. She had a history of this, taking credit, manipulating narratives, burning people who helped her. I'd just been the most recent. I still wasn't sure what I was going to do. Part of me wanted to send everything to Meridian's HR and blow up her new job immediately, but that felt too obvious, too emotional. I wanted something more surgical. I wanted her to lose it the same way I'd lost it, slowly, quietly, with no one to blame but herself. So I waited. I focused on my own applications, my own networking. I stayed off her radar. I let her think we were fine, just distant friends who drifted, and I paid attention. In mid-May, I saw a post from Meridian's CEO on LinkedIn. They were hosting a panel discussion on brand strategy and innovation, looking for industry professionals to submit case studies for potential presentation spots. It was a big deal, high visibility. I knew Nicole would apply. She loved that kind of spotlight. I also knew she didn't have a strong enough case study yet. She'd only been at Meridian for 6 weeks. I waited 3 days, then sent her a text. Casual, friendly. Hey, saw Meridian's doing that panel thing. Are you submitting anything? She responded immediately. Yes, I'm working on a case study, but honestly struggling a bit. It's hard to find the right angle. I offered to help. I said I had some old work that might give her ideas. She was grateful, almost painfully so, like she'd forgotten she'd stabbed me in the back 2 months earlier. We met for coffee that weekend. She told me about her case study idea. It was thin, barely fleshed out. I listened, nodded, asked questions. Then I sent her some of my old project files, real work, solid campaigns. I told her to use them for inspiration. She thanked me over and over, said I was the best friend she could ask for. I smiled and said it was no problem. What she didn't know was that those files were ones I'd already submitted to a different industry publication 3 months earlier. They were public, they were mine, and they were easily searchable. 2 weeks later, Nicole submitted her case study to Meridian's panel committee. I know because she told me, excited and nervous, asking if I thought she had a chance. I told her I was sure she'd do great. Then I waited. The following week, I sent an anonymous email to Meridian's panel committee. No threats, no drama, just a polite note saying I'd noticed similarities between a submitted case study and previously published work, and I was attaching links for reference. I included the publication where my work had appeared, the date, and a side-by-side comparison. I didn't mention Nicole's name. I didn't have to. 3 days later, she called me crying. She'd been called into a meeting with her manager and HR. They'd flagged her case study for potential plagiarism. She swore she didn't copy anything, that she'd just used my work for inspiration, like I suggested. She was panicking, saying they were treating her like a cheater, that this could ruin everything. I made sympathetic noises. I told her to be honest with them, to explain the situation. I said I was sure it would be fine. It wasn't fine. Meridian took plagiarism seriously. They pulled her case study from consideration and launched a quiet review of her work since she'd started. They looked at the projects she'd claimed credit for in her interview. They reached out to her former employer for references, something they apparently hadn't done thoroughly the first time. Her former boss, the one I'd messaged on LinkedIn, gave them the same rundown he'd given me. By early June, Nicole was on thin ice. She knew it. She stopped posting on social media, stopped texting me. I imagined her sitting in that office she'd been so excited about, feeling the walls close in. I didn't reach out. I just watched. Then the final piece fell into place without me even trying. One of the people on Meridian's hiring team, the one I'd spoken to months earlier about my rejection, ran into me at an industry event in late June. We talked. She mentioned, carefully, that they'd had some issues with a recent hire and were reevaluating their process. I asked, even more carefully, if that hire had been the one I'd referred. She nodded. Then she said something that made everything click. We found out she may have misrepresented some things during her interview, including some comments about you. We're looking into it. I kept my face neutral. I said I appreciated her telling me. Then I mentioned, as if it had just occurred to me, that I'd be happy to provide clarification if it would help. They took my contact information. 2 days later, I got a call from Meridian's HR. They asked if I'd be willing to speak with them about my working relationship with Nicole. I agreed. I was calm, factual. I told them we'd never worked together professionally. I provided the timeline of my referral, my application, my rejection. I didn't accuse her of lying. I just answered their questions honestly. They thanked me for my time. 1 week later, Nicole was let go. The official reason was performance concerns and misalignment with company values during the probationary period. She posted a vague message on LinkedIn about unexpected transitions and new chapters. No office photos, just a quiet, humiliating exit. She didn't text me, didn't call. I think she knew. I found out later, through the same industry contact, that Meridian had discovered she'd lied about her level of involvement at projects at her previous job. That, combined with the plagiarism issue and the false statements about me during the interview, had been enough. They didn't want the liability. 3 months after I'd referred her, she was unemployed, and I was still here, still working, still building. Last week, I got an email from Meridian. They were reopening the senior strategist position and wondered if I'd be interested in reapplying. The hiring manager mentioned they'd love to reconnect given the circumstances and hear more about what I'd been working on. I haven't decided yet if I'll apply. Part of me wants it, part of me doesn't want anything to do with that place anymore. What I do know is this. Nicole didn't just take a job from me. She tried to erase me to get it. She weaponized a friendship, lied to people who trusted her, and thought she'd gotten away with it. But the thing about building a career on lies is that eventually the foundation cracks. You can't fake competence forever. You can't steal your way to the top without leaving a trail. I didn't destroy her. I just stopped covering for her. I stopped being the person who made her look good, who handed her opportunities, who stayed quiet when things didn't add up. And when she finally had to stand on her own, without me propping her up, she fell. I don't feel triumphant. I don't feel like I won some grand battle. Mostly, I feel tired, but I also feel something I haven't felt in months. I feel like I took up space again, like my work, my reputation, my truth mattered enough to fight for. Nicole sent me a message 2 days ago, just one line. I know what you did. I didn't respond. There's nothing left to say. She made a choice when she walked into that interview and lied about me. She chose her ambition over our friendship, her advancement over my dignity. And when the consequences finally caught up to her, she wanted to make it my fault. But I didn't steal anything from her. I just stopped giving. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction. It's stepping back and letting someone show the world exactly who they are, and then making sure the right people are paying attention when they do.